A 5-year-old homeless girl says to a millionaire who didn't believe in miracles, "If I make your son speak, will you give me your leftovers?" The millionaire laughed. But what his 6-year-old nonverbal son said next shocked everyone. Before we begin, let's create a wave of positivity. Comment one word that describes how you're feeling today. Nevaeh clutched her thin jacket tighter as the November wind cut through the alleyways of Boston. 5 years old and alone, she'd learned to spot opportunities where others saw nothing. Tonight, that opportunity gleamed in the polished windows of Hartwell's, the city's most exclusive restaurant. She watched as the wealthy patrons emerged, their laughter floating like smoke in the cold air. Her stomach twisted with familiar hunger when she spotted him. A tall man in a tailored suit, his hand resting protectively on the shoulder of a boy about her age. The boy's vacant expression and carefully guided movements told Nevaeh everything she needed to know. "Johnson. And his son again," muttered Felix, the doorman who sometimes slipped Nevaeh leftover bread. "Poor little fella hasn't spoken a word since birth. All the money in the world, and some things just can't be fixed." Nevaeh felt a strange flutter in her chest as she watched them. Something about the boy pulled at her, a feeling like remembering a dream. Before she could second-guess herself, she darted across the street. "Sir, sir, please!" she called, her voice small against the traffic noise. The man, Johnson, turned with the practiced patience of someone accustomed to being approached. His eyes, steel blue and tired, assessed her with a glance. Ragged clothes, unwashed hair, the desperate look of a street child. "I don't carry cash," he said automatically. "I don't want money," Nevaeh replied, then hesitated. The words forming in her mind made no sense, yet felt absolutely true. "I can make your son talk." "Johnson?" Bing's expression hardened. "Excuse me, your son?" Nevaeh pointed to the boy who was now looking at her with unusual intensity. "I can make him speak if I do. Could I have the leftovers from your dinner?" The man's laugh was sharp and cold. "Listen, kid." She was with me, and a small, clear voice came. Johnson froze, his face draining of color as he turned to his son. "Corey," he whispered disbelievingly. The boy Corey kept his eyes fixed on Nevaeh, recognition blazing in them. "Daddy," he said, the word strange in his unpracticed mouth. "She was in Mommy's tummy with me." Nevaeh felt the world tilt as memories flashed through her mind. Darkness, warmth, another presence always beside her. The strange familiarity she'd felt toward this boy suddenly made perfect sense. Johnson staggered back, catching himself against a parked car. 5 years of specialists, therapies, and heartbreak. And now his son was speaking perfect sentences to a homeless girl claiming impossible things. "Who are you?" he demanded, his voice shaking. Nevaeh stood her ground, despite her trembling legs. "My name is Nevaeh. I don't have a last name, and I don't know why, but I've been looking for him my whole life." Cora broke away from his father's grip and took a step toward Nevaeh. In the glow of the streetlights, anyone could see it. The same eyes, the same chin, the same tilt of the head. "What's happening?" Johnson whispered. Nevaeh reached out slowly, her small, dirty hand extended toward Corey. "I don't know," she said honestly, "but I've always known I had a brother somewhere." Jaden Johnson had built his fortune by trusting data, not intuition. Emotions were messy variables that clouded judgment. Yet here he stood in his penthouse apartment, watching his son, his nonverbal son, whisper secrets to a homeless girl who had appeared out of nowhere. "More juice, please," Corey said to Nevaeh, who carefully poured from the crystal pitcher. Each word from Corey's mouth sent tremors through Will's reality. Mr. Johnson, Dr. Denzel, Corey's neurologist, had arrived within the hour. "May I speak with you privately?" In his study, Will paced while the doctor spoke. "I've been treating Corey for 5 years, and I've never seen anything like this. It's as if a switch flipped in his brain. She claims to be his twin," Will said. "That's impossible. Sana and I had one child. Corey was a single birth. I was there. Were there complications with Sana's pregnancy?" Will flinched at his late wife's name. The final months were difficult. She was on bed rest. "The delivery," his voice faltered. Sana hemorrhaged. They performed an emergency C-section. I was focused on my wife, Dr. Denzel. She died 3 days later without ever waking up. The doctor nodded, and the documentation of the birth. Single birth, 1 baby, Corey Johnson. Born 6:15 a.m., November 12, 2018. I'd like to examine the girl, Dr. Denzel said. With your permission. When they returned to the living room, Nevaeh sat cross-legged on the floor with Corey, building an elaborate structure with blocks that had gone untouched for years. Nevaeh, Will said carefully. This is Dr. Aberonathy. He'd like to check if you're healthy. Nevaeh's eyes, so unnervingly like Corey's, darted to the exits. Am I in trouble? No, sweetheart, the doctor assured her. I just want to make sure you're okay. As Dr. Denzel conducted a basic examination, Will called his sister Margaret. Malia, I need you. Something's happened with Corey. Is he okay? Worries sharpened her voice. He's talking. Malia actually talking. What? Well, there's more. There's a girl. She showed up outside Hartwell's claiming to be his twin. And Malia, he recognized her. Silence stretched between them. Finally, Malia whispered, That's not possible. I know. But he's speaking, Malia. Full sentences. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Will return to find Dr. Denzel, looking troubled. What is it? Will demanded. The doctor spoke quietly. She's approximately 5 years old. Same blood type as Corey, according to her medical alert bracelet. Similar facial structure, and there's a birthmark on her right shoulder blade, shaped like a crescent moon. Will finished, his voice hollow. Corey has the same one. Sana called it the Johnson mark. Her father had it too. From the living room came the sound of Corey's laughter, a sound Will had never heard before. I need to know where she came from, Will said. I need the truth. Nevaeh's story was fragmented. Foster care, a family named Peter who went away. 2 years on the streets. No memory of her birth parents, just a recurring dream of floating in darkness with someone else beside her. They always said my mother died having me, Nevaeh told Will, and that my father didn't want me. Will felt something crack inside him. Where did you live before the streets with the Peters in Dorchester? But then men came and took Mr. Peter away. Mrs. Peter started drinking the funny-smelling stuff. Then she left and never came back. When Malia arrived, she took one look at Nevaeh and gasped. Her eyes flew to Will's. She looks like Sana. The DNA testing facility operated with cold efficiency. Nevaeh sat swinging her legs in a chair far too large for her small frame, watching as the technician gently swabbed the inside of Corey's cheek. Corey hadn't stopped talking since yesterday. Mostly to Nevaeh, occasionally to Will, but always with a certainty that belied his 7 years of silence. It doesn't hurt, Nevaeh assured him. Just tickles a little. Will observed their interaction with a mixture of wonder and suspicion. He'd spent the night researching imposter cases, children trained to infiltrate wealthy families, elaborate scams targeting vulnerable parents. None of it explained Corey's transformation. The technician approached Nevaeh next. Your turn, young lady. When will we know? Will asked. Rush results take 48 hours, Mr. Johnson. 2 days to unravel a mystery that had shattered his world overnight. Will had already made a dozen calls. To the hospital where Corey was born, to his lawyers, to a private investigator with a talent for discretion. As they left the facility, Nevaeh hesitated at the door. Where am I going now? The question knocked the air from Will's lungs. In the chaos, he hadn't considered what to do with her beyond the DNA test. You'll stay with us, he said, surprising himself. Until we figured this out, Corey beamed. Nevaeh's coming home with us. Malia had spent the morning preparing the guest room, though her text messages conveyed her reservations. Will, please be careful. This could be an elaborate scam. Your wealth makes you a target. But watching Corey hold Nevaeh's hand as they walked to the car, Will struggled to see deceit in their connection. Something profound and inexplicable was happening, and at its center was his son, speaking, laughing, alive in ways Will had never dared hope for. At the penthouse, Nevaeh stared wide-eyed at her surroundings. Is this a castle? It's an apartment, Corey explained, his speech improving by the hour. My bedroom has a view of the whole city. Come see a duress. As the children disappeared down the hallway, Will sank onto the sofa beside his sister. "What did the hospital say?" Malia asked. "Records show a single birth, but the administrator mentioned something strange. The doctor who delivered Corey, Dr. Harlow, died in a car accident 6 months after Cora was born, and the head nurse on duty that night, Sharon Oakes, left the hospital soon after." "That doesn't mean anything, Will. I've asked the PI to locate Sharon Oakes, and I've requested complete access to Sanaa's medical records." Malia placed her hand over his. "Well, I know you want this to be true. Ever since Sanaa died, this isn't about Sanaa," Will interrupted. "Or even about me. You've seen Cora today. He's a different child. Children with selective mutism can sometimes—" "This isn't selective mutism, Malia. Every specialist diagnosed him with profound developmental verbal ataxia. They said he might never speak." The sound of laughter floated down the hallway, Corey's and Nevaeh's voices blending together as naturally as if they'd never been apart. "She says she remembers darkness and someone holding her hand," Will said quietly. "And that when she saw Corey, it was like remembering something she'd forgotten." Malia's expression softened. "And what do you believe?" Will stared at his hands. "I don't know, but I'm going to find out who Nevaeh is, where she came from, and why my son believes she's his twin." When Will checked on them later, he found Corey showing Nevaeh his treasured collection of sea glass, colorful fragments gathered from beaches during vacations he never seemed to enjoy until now. "Daddy," Corey said, the word still new and miraculous. "Nevaeh remembers the lady with the red hair who used to sing to us." Will felt his heart stutter. "What lady?" "The one who sang about the moon and stars," Nevaeh said. "Before we were born, Sanaa had red hair, and she had sung that exact lullaby throughout her pregnancy." The Johnson estate in Cape Cod stood against the grey December sky like a fortress of old money and careful preservation. The caretakers had prepared it for Will's unexpected visit, lighting fires in the grand stone fireplaces and stocking the kitchen with food. Nevaeh pressed her face against the car window as they approached, her breath fogging the glass. "It's bigger than Hartwell's," she whispered. Beside her, Cora bounced with excitement. "We have a beach and rocks to climb and secret places." Will watched them through the rear-view mirror. The past 3 days had been a blur of discoveries. Nevaeh now wore clean clothes from the boutiques on Newbury Street. Her hair, washed and trimmed, revealed the same rich brown shade as Corey's. She'd gained 2 pounds already, her hollow cheeks slowly filling out with regular meals. Most remarkably, Corey hadn't stopped talking. Dr. Denzel called it unprecedented and had arranged for a speech pathologist to assess him on Monday. Whatever had locked Corey's words away for 5 years had been freed by Nevaeh's appearance. The DNA results wouldn't arrive until tomorrow, but Will had already uncovered troubling inconsistencies in the hospital records. Sanaa's admission forms noted twin gestation suspected at her 18-week ultrasound, but subsequent documentation referenced only a single fetus. The change occurred after an appointment with Dr. Harlow, the same doctor who died months later. Will had brought them to Cape Cod to escape the media attention. Someone at the DNA facility had leaked information about the Johnson and heir's mysterious twin, and reporters had started gathering outside the Boston penthouse. "We're here," Will announced, pulling up to the house. As Corey led Nevaeh through the sprawling house, showing her his favorite hiding spots with the expertise of a seasoned tour guide, Will retreated to his study with a glass of scotch and the folder of documents his PI had delivered that morning. Sharon Oakes, the head nurse from the night of Corey's birth, now lived in Arizona. The PI had located her, but reported she was reluctant to discuss the Johnson case. Will had already booked a flight to Phoenix for next week. More disturbing were the financial records. 2 months after Corey's birth, Dr. Harlow had paid off his mortgage and purchased a vacation home in Vermont. The source of the sudden windfall wasn't clear. Will Malia stood in the doorway, concern etched on her face. "The children want to walk on the beach. I told them I'd ask you. We'll close the folder. I'll take them." Bundled against the winter wind, they walked along the shore while Malia prepared dinner. Nevaeh collected shells with the serious concentration of a child who'd never owned anything worth keeping. Cora talked constantly, pointing out landmarks and sharing memories of summer visits. Nevaeh Will said carefully. Do you remember anything about when you were very little before the Peters? Nevaeh squinted at the horizon. There was a lady with glasses and a blue sweater. She took me to the Peters. She said I was special and needed a special family. Do you remember her name? Nevaeh shook her head. She smelled like the stuff they put on your hands at the doctor's. Hand sanitizer? Will murmured. A hospital worker, perhaps. I remember being cold, Nevaeh continued. Really cold, and crying for the boy who was always with me. But then he wasn't there anymore. Corey, who'd been examining a piece of driftwood nearby, looked up. I remember being cold, too, and looking for you. Will felt a chill that had nothing to do with the December air. That night, after the children were asleep, Will called the PI again. I need everything you can find on black market adoptions connected to Boston Memorial between 2015 and 2019, he said. And I want Sharon Oaks on a plane to Boston, whatever it costs. As he hung up, Will noticed a light under the guest room door. He knocked softly. Nevaeh, everything okay? He found her sitting by the window, staring at the moon over the ocean. I used to pretend my real family lived on the moon, she said. That's why they couldn't come get me. Will sat beside her. It was heartbreaking for this child who might be his daughter. What if your family wasn't on the moon? He asked gently. What if they were right here but didn't know where to find you? Nevaeh looked at him, Sanaa's eyes staring back from a face so like his own. Would they want me even though I'm not fancy like Corey? Will felt something shift inside him. Walls built after Sanaa's death slowly crumbling. They would want you more than anything in the world. The envelope sat unopened on Will's desk. The logo of the DNA testing facility embossed in the corner. 48 hours had stretched to 52 as the lab ran additional tests at Will's request. Now the results had arrived, delivered by courier to the Cape Cod estate, while Nevaeh and Corey built elaborate sandcastles on the beach under Malia's watchful eye. Will stared at the envelope, both craving and dreading its contents. If Nevaeh wasn't Corey's twin, wasn't his daughter, what would that mean for Corey, who had blossomed in her presence? And if she was, how had he not known? Howard had his daughter end up on the streets, while he raised her brother in luxury. The knock at his study door startled him. Dr. Denzel entered, snow dusting his overcoat. The neurologist had driven up from Boston at Will's request. You haven't opened it, he observed, nodding at the envelope. Will shook his head. I needed a witness, someone with no personal stake. And if she is your daughter, what then? Then I'll spend the rest of my life making up for 7 years of absence, Will said, and finding who took her from us. With steady hands, Will opened the envelope and unfolded the report. The medical terminology swam before his eyes until he found the conclusion. Probability of full sibling relationship between subjects, 999,998%. Will's breath caught. They're twins. Dr. Denzel scanned the report. Identical twins will share 100% of their DNA. How is that possible? Identical twins are always the same sex. Not always. It's exceptionally rare. But it can happen. A single egg splits, then one twin experiences something called sex chromosome anomalies. During development, Will thought of Sanaa's difficult pregnancy, the complications, the extended bed rest. She knew, he whispered. Sanaa suspected we were having twins. She was so insistent on keeping the ultrasound results a surprise. The study door burst open as Cora ran in, cheeks flushed from the cold. Daddy! Nevaeh showed me how to dig a moat that doesn't collapse. His words are so fluid now, no longer shocked Will. In just days, it had become their new normal. This miracle no specialist had predicted. Corey, where's Nevaeh? Will asked Aunt Malia. They're making hot chocolate. Cora noticed the doctor and waved. Hi, doctor. Hello, Corey. You're sounding very good today. Corey beamed. Nevaeh says, I talk better every day because my brain remembers how now. He peered at the papers on Will's desk. What's that? Will exchanged glances with Dr. Denzel. Corey, do you remember when you first saw Nevaeh? You said she was in Mommy's tummy with you. Corey nodded solemnly. Because she was. How did you know that? Corey considered the question with a child's simple logic. I always knew someone was missing. I dreamed about her, and when I saw her, my words came back. He shrugged as if this explained everything. Perhaps Will thought it did. When Cora left to find Nevaeh, Dr. Denzel spoke quietly. This connection between them. It's more than just being twins. Some research suggests identical twins share a bond that transcends conventional understanding. Corey's verbal development might have been impacted by the separation. Will thought of the 7 years of specialists, therapies, and dead ends. You're saying that separating them might have caused his condition? I'm saying it's a possibility worth exploring. Will stared out the window at the grey winter ocean. I need to tell her. She deserves to know she has a father, a family. The weight of that responsibility pressed on him. How did you tell a 5-year-old street child that she was born into wealth but stolen away? How did you explain why her father had never searched for her, never even known she existed? In the kitchen he found Nevaeh carefully sprinkling many marshmallows on 4 mugs of hot chocolate. Her methodical precision, exactly 5 marshmallows per mug, reminded him so much of Sanaa that his throat tightened. Nevaeh, when you're finished, could we talk? There's something important I need to tell you. Her eyes, his eyes, Corey's eyes, flickered with apprehension. Am I in trouble? The familiar question broke his heart. No, sweetheart. You're not in trouble. You're home. Snow fell in gentle swirls outside Boston Children's Hospital as Will guided Nevaeh through the sliding doors. After revealing the DNA results to her 3 days ago, he'd watched her cycle through confusion, disbelief, joy, and a deep, simmering anger that occasionally surfaced in pointed questions. Why didn't you look for me? Didn't you count the babies? How could you not know? Each question pierced Will like a blade, but he answered as honestly as he could. In the evenings, he found himself sitting beside her bed, telling her about Sanaa, the mother she would never know. Today's hospital visit served 2 purposes: to register Nevaeh officially as Nevaeh Johnson, and to meet with specialists about the remarkable bond between the twins. Corey hadn't left Nevaeh's side since their reunion, and his language skills continued to develop at an astonishing pace. Mr. Johnson, Dr. Santos, the pediatric neurologist, greeted them in the consultation room. And this must be Nevaeh. As the doctors conducted their evaluations, Will stepped into the hallway to take a call from his lawyer. "We've filed the initial paperwork for Nevaeh's legal recognition," Mr. Whitman explained. "But there's a complication. The Peters, her foster parents, have resurfaced. They're claiming they never abandoned Nevaeh and that she was kidnapped from them." Will felt his blood pressure spike. That's absurd. Nevaeh says Mrs. Peter disappeared 2 years ago. Nevertheless, they've hired representation. They're demanding Nevaeh's return and suggesting a financial settlement might resolve the Corey. Will's jaw tightened. They're extortionists. Arthur, Nevaeh is my biological daughter. DNA proves it. They're claiming they've raised her for 5 years and have established parental rights. It's not as clear-cut as we'd hope. After ending the call, Will leaned against the wall, emotions warring inside him. He'd only known Nevaeh for a week, yet the thought of losing her again felt like having his heart torn out. And what would separation do to Corey? Inside the consultation room, Nevaeh and Cora sat, side by side, completing puzzles as part of their cognitive assessment. Through the observation window, Will watched their synchronized movements, reaching for pieces at the same moment, mirroring each other's posture. "Mr. Johnson," a woman's voice broke his concentration. Will turned to find an older nurse with silver-streaked hair and anxious eyes. "Yes, my name is Patricia EMTT. I worked at Boston Memorial 5 years ago in the maternity ward." She glanced around nervously. "I saw the news about your twins. I've been carrying this secret for too long." Will's heart raced. "What secret? That night when your wife was brought in, everything happened so fast. The hemorrhaging, the emergency C-section. B." She wrung her hands. "Dr. Harlow delivered the babies, a boy and a girl. Your son was having breathing difficulties. Dr. Harlow handed him to me while he tended to the second baby, your daughter." Will felt lightheaded. "What happened?" "Sharon Oakes took the girl for cleaning and assessment. That was protocol. But when I asked about the second baby later, Dr. Harlow said there had been a mistake, that it was just one baby all along." Tears filled the nurse's eyes. "I knew something was wrong. 2 babies were delivered. I saw them both. But Dr. Harlow insisted I was confused due to the emergency nature of the delivery. And you didn't report this. To whom? Dr. Harlow was the chief of obstetrics. When I tried to discuss it with Sharon, she transferred to another department. 3 weeks later, I found a note in my locker. Forget what you think you saw or lose your job. I had 3 kids in college. Mr. Johnson, I couldn't afford to fight. Her voice broke. I've regretted my silence every day since. Will struggled to contain his rage. Do you know what happened to my daughter? No, but Sharon might. She and Dr. Harlow were close. Too close, according to hospital gossip. As Patricia EMTT walked away, promising to provide a formal statement to Will's lawyers, Will felt a coldness settle in his bones. Someone had stolen his daughter, erased her existence from the records, and left her to suffer while her brother languished in silence without her. In that moment, standing in the sterile hospital hallway with snow falling beyond the windows, Jaden Johnson made 2 vows: to heal his broken family and to bring to justice everyone who had torn it apart. Sharon Oakes lived in a modest stucco house on the outskirts of Phoenix, where desert winds carried dust across carefully tended cacti gardens. Will had flown in alone, leaving the twins in Malia care at the Boston penthouse, which now hummed with the sounds of Nevaeh's laughter and Corey's incessant chatter. The past 2 weeks had been a whirlwind. Nevaeh was officially registered as Nevaeh Sanaa Johnson, though Peter's legal challenge loomed. Security had been doubled at the penthouse after a suspicious man was spotted taking photographs of the children. The hospital investigation had yielded troubling financial transactions between Dr. Harlow and an adoption agency that had since been shuttered for ethical violations. But the most remarkable development was the twins themselves. Corey's vocabulary now matched that of any 5-year-old, and his developmental assessments showed astonishing improvement across all metrics. Nevaeh was flourishing with proper nutrition and care, her street-hardened edges softening as she cautiously embraced her new reality. She still hoarded food in her pockets, a habit Will pretended not to notice, and startled at loud noises. But each day brought small victories. Now, standing on Sharon Oakes' doorstep, Will prepared for answers he both craved and dreaded. The door opened to reveal a thin woman with weary eyes and prematurely grey hair. Recognition flickered across her face. Mr. Johnson. Her voice was flat. I wondered when you'd come. Inside, the house was meticulously clean with framed nursing certificates hanging alongside religious icons. Sharon perched on the edge of an armchair, fingers twisting a tissue. Patricia EMTT came forward, Will said without preamble. She confirmed 2 babies were delivered that night. Sharon's posture stiffened. Patricia always had an overactive imagination. The DNA results confirm it. Nevaeh is my daughter, Corey's identical twin. A tear slipped down Sharon's cheek. You weren't supposed to find her. The admission hung in the air between them. Will's hands clenched into fists. Why? The single word carried 5 years of loss. Dr. Harlow approached me the week before your wife's due date, Sharon began, her voice barely audible. He said there was a wealthy couple who couldn't conceive. They were willing to pay a substantial amount for a healthy newborn with the right pedigree. Pedigree? Will spat the word. Your family background. Harvard education. Your wife's artistic talents and beauty. Sharon couldn't meet his eyes. The baby would have every advantage. She ended up on the streets, Will said coldly, abandoned by her foster family, begging for food outside restaurants. Sharon flinched. That wasn't supposed to happen. The Ellis were vetted. The Ellis, not the Peters. Then confusion crossed Sharon's face. No, Richard and Cleo Ellis, from Greenwich. They paid $15 million. Will's mind raced. If Nevaeh had originally gone to the Ellis, how had she ended up with the Peters? And who were these people now claiming parental rights? When your wife started hemorrhaging, it was chaos, Sharon continued. 2 babies came, the boy with breathing difficulties, the girl perfectly healthy. Dr. Harlow falsified the records to show only 1 birth while I took the girl. You stole my daughter, Doctor. Harlow said you'd never know that with your wife's condition, you were focused entirely on her. He said 1 child would be enough for a man like you. Rage boiled inside Will. A man like me. Wealthy. Privileged. He said the money would help children who really needed it. Sharon's voice cracked. I told myself it was for the greater good. The Ellis couldn't have children, and you'd never miss what you didn't know you had. But the money didn't go to children in need, did it? It went to Harlow's mortgage and your new life in Arizona. Sharon's silence was confirmation enough. What happened to the Ellis? Why did Nevaeh end up with the Peters? I don't know. After the handoff, I never contacted them. It was safer that way. Will stood towering over the diminished woman. You're going to tell this entire story to the FBI. Every detail, every name, every dollar. They'll send me to prison. Yes, Will said simply. They will. As Will walked to his rental car, his phone rang. Malia number. Will, you need to come home, she said, her voice tight with worry. The Peters showed up at the penthouse. They're causing a scene in the lobby. And Will, they don't look anything like Nevaeh described. The Peters weren't the Peters at all. FBI agent Carla Torres delivered this news in Will's study as a winter storm battered the penthouse windows. 3 days had passed since Will's confrontation with Sharon Oakes, who was now cooperating with federal authorities. The couple claiming to be Nevaeh's foster parents are actually Judith and Alan Mercer, Agent Torres explained, small-time scam artists with records in 3 states. They learned about Nevaeh through the media coverage and saw an opportunity for a payday. Relief washed through Will, one less battle to fight. What about the real Peters? Martin Peter is serving 10 years for investment fraud. His wife Caroline died of an overdose 18 months ago. Agent Torres's expression softened. According to neighbors, they took in a 5-year-old girl who matched Nevaeh's description. After Martin's arrest, Caroline's addiction worsened. The girl disappeared around the time of Caroline's death. The timeline aligned with Nevaeh's account. Will thought of his daughter navigating the streets alone at age 5, hungry, frightened, searching for safety while he read bedtime stories to Corey in their climate-controlled penthouse. The contrast sickened him. And the Carlyles, the original adoptive parents, that's where things get interesting. Agent Torres opened a file. Richard and Cleo Ellis, of Greenwich, Connecticut, wealthy, childless, paid $15 million to Dr. Harlow for a private adoption in November 2018. 9 months later, they died in a sailing accident off Martha's Vineyard. Jesus. Will ran a hand through his hair and Nevaeh. According to their household staff, the Ellis employed a nanny for their daughter, a woman named Lillian Bishop. After their deaths, Miss Bishop disappeared with the child. Agent Torres met Will's gaze. We believe Lillian Bishop placed Nevaeh with the Peters, possibly for payment, possibly because she couldn't care for the child herself. Where is Bishop now? We're looking for her. She may be our best link to understanding what happened in the missing years. After Agent Torres left, Will found the twins in the entertainment room where Nevaeh was teaching Carito play a card game she'd learnt on the streets. Despite the trauma of her past, Nevaeh possessed a resilience that humbled Will. She'd adapted to her new life with surprising grace. Though she remained fiercely protective, a foster approached each luxury with cautious disbelief. Daddy, Corey waved Will over. Nevaeh's teaching me how to know when someone's bluffing. Will raised an eyebrow at his daughter. Is that so? Nevaeh gave a half smile. It's useful. I'm sure it is. Will sat beside them. Nevaeh, I need to ask you something important. Do you remember a woman named Lillian Bishop? She might have been your nanny when you were very little. Nevaeh's brow furrowed in concentration. Was she tall with dark hair and a star on her wrist? A tattoo? Will leaned forward. Nevaeh nodded. She was nice. She sang to me when I had bad dreams, but then she was crying, and we had to leave our big house. She said the bad men might come for us. What bad men, Nevaeh? I don't know, but she was scared of them. She took me to the Peters and said she'd come back when it was safe. Nevaeh's eyes clouded, but she never did. Will exchanged a glance with Malia, who'd been listening from the doorway. Something more sinister than a black market adoption was at play. That night, after the twins were asleep, Will received another call from Agent Torres. We found Lillian Bishop, she said. Or rather, she found us. She walked into the Boston field office an hour ago, after seeing Nevaeh's picture on the news. She's been in hiding for nearly 2 years. What did she say? She claims the Ellis were murdered. That their boating accident was engineered because they discovered something about Nevaeh's origins. Something that put them all in danger. What could they have possibly discovered? She'll only discuss it with you, Mr. Johnson. She says it concerns your wife's death as well. Will felt as though the floor had dropped away beneath him. Sanaa's death had been attributed to complications from childbirth, a tragedy, but not suspicious. What could possibly connect her death to the Ellis accident? The next morning, with the twins safely ensconced in a day of neurological testing at Boston Children's, Will met Lillian Bishop in a secure room at the FBI office. She was exactly as Nevaeh had described, tall and slender, with dark hair and a star tattoo on her wrist. "Mr. Johnson," she began, her voice steady despite her evident fear. "I've protected Nevaeh as best I could. I never stopped watching over her, even after I had to place her with the Peters." "You abandoned her," Will countered. "I was being followed. I couldn't risk leading them to her." Lillian's eyes pleaded for understanding. "The Ellis hired me when Nevaeh was 3 months old. They were good people who believed they'd adopted her through legitimate, if unorthodox, channels. They adored her. What changed? When Nevaeh was about 18 months old, Cleo Carlyle stumbled across an old news article about your wife's death. The timing coincided with Nevaeh's birth, and Cleo noticed the physical similarities between Nevaeh and the Johnson family. She began to investigate. And what did she find? Lillian took a deep breath. Evidence that your wife's death wasn't from natural complications. That Dr. Harlow deliberately delayed treatment that could have saved her life. The memorial garden for Sanaa Johnson bloomed with winter roses, their delicate petals crystallized with frost. Will stood before the marble bench inscribed with her name, his breath clouding in the December air. Behind him, Nevaeh and Corey placed pine boughs around the stone angel that watched over the garden, a Christmas tradition Will had maintained each year since Sanaa's death. 2 weeks had passed since Lillian Bishop's revelations had shattered Will's understanding of his wife's death. The FBI investigation had uncovered a trail of evidence supporting her claims, manipulated medical charts, altered timestamps on emergency response records, and witness statements that contradicted the official timeline of events. Most damning was Dr. Harlow's financial activity immediately following Sanaa's death. Large deposits into offshore accounts that coincided with payments from a shell company linked to Javen Townsend, Sanaa's former business partner. The connection had blindsided Will. Javen had been a friend, had even attended Sanaa's funeral, comforting Will with seemingly genuine grief. Now it appeared he had orchestrated her death, arranged the theft of Nevaeh, and ordered the murder of the Ellis. When they began asking questions, but why? What could possibly justify such elaborate, heartless machinations? "The flowers are pretty, Daddy," Nevaeh said, slipping her small hand into his. In just a month, she had transformed from a weary street child to a more trusting, though still cautious daughter. Her nightmares had decreased. Her vocabulary had expanded, and she'd gained enough weight that her cheeks no longer looked hollow. "Your mother loved roses," Will told her. "She planted this garden the year before you were born." "Do you think she knows about me now?" Nevaeh asked. The question caught Will off guard. "What do you mean, sweetheart? In heaven, do you think she knows you found me?" Will knelt beside her, his heart aching. "I think she's been watching over you all along, and I think she helped bring you back to us." Nevaeh considered this with solemn eyes. "Corey says we have her smile." "You do." Will brushed a strand of hair from her face and her courage. Was she brave? "The bravest person I've ever known." Will stood, taking Nevaeh's hand again. "Let's find foster Aunt Malia. It's getting cold." As they walked back toward the main house, Will's phone vibrated with a text from Agent Torres. "We found him. Arrest warrant issued. Call me." Will's pulse quickened. After weeks of searching, they had located Javon Townsend, who had fled to a remote property in the Adirondacks. Soon, Will would have answers about why his former friend had destroyed their family. Inside the warmth of the estate, Malia was helping Corey hang ornaments on the massive Christmas tree in the great room. Nevaeh approached the tree with reverence, her eyes wide at the glittering decorations. "Is this all for Christmas?" she asked, her voice hushed. "It is," Malia answered, handing her a crystal snowflake. "This one is special. It belonged to your grandmother." As Nevaeh carefully placed the heirloom on a branch, Will was struck by how naturally she had found her place in their family. Yet her years of hardship had left invisible wounds that revealed themselves in small moments. Her reflexive flinching when someone raised a hand near her face, her habit of assessing every room for exits, the way she still sometimes reverted to silence when overwhelmed. The specialists called it adaptive survival behaviors and assured Will that with time and consistent support, these responses would fade. Corey remarkably seemed to understand his twins' unspoken distress signals before anyone else, often intuitively creating diversions when Nevaeh became anxious. "Will," Malia called from across the room. "There's someone at the gate. Security just called." Will be tense. Despite increased security measures, he remained vigilant about unexpected visitors. "Who is it?" "They say it's Sanaa's mother, Sarah Bennett." Will hadn't seen his mother-in-law since Sanaa's funeral, where grief had created a chasm between them. Sarah had blamed Will for her daughter's death, claiming that his demands for a family had put Sanaa at risk despite her history of reproductive health issues. Their relationship, never warm, had fractured completely. Let her in, Will decided after a moment's hesitation. Sarah deserved to know about Nevaeh, about the granddaughter she'd never met, and the truth behind her daughter's death. When Sarah Bennett entered the great room 30 minutes later, her imperious demeanor faltered at the sight of the twins decorating the Christmas tree. Matchie recognized, though she'd only seen him a handful of times over the years, but Nevaeh stopped her in her tracks. "Sanaa," she whispered, her face draining of color. "Grandmother," Cora turned, beaming. "Look what we're doing. This is my sister, Nevaeh." Sarah's gaze darted between the children, then to Will. "What is this?" "Perhaps we should talk privately," Will suggested, leading her toward his study. Once the door closed behind them, Sarah rounded on him. "Explain yourself, William. That child is the spitting image of Sanaa at that age." Will poured 2 fingers of scotch and handed her the glass. "You might need this. Nevaeh is Corey's identical twin sister. She was stolen at birth and illegally adopted." Sarah sank into a chair, shock etched across her features. "Twins? But the hospital said the hospital lied. Or more specifically, Dr. Harlow lied. He falsified the records, separated the twins, and arranged for Nevaeh to be sold to a wealthy couple for $1 lion. Dear God." Sarah drained the scotch in one swallow. "How did you find her?" Will told her the abbreviated version of Nevaeh's appearance outside Hartwell's and Corey's miraculous first words. He explained the DNA confirmation, Sharon Oakes' confession, and the FBI's ongoing investigation into Javon Townsend's involvement. Javon. Sarah's hand trembled as she set down her glass. Sanaa's partner. The FBI believes he orchestrated everything from Nevaeh's theft to Will hesitation. To what? To Sanaa's death. Will finished quietly. Evidence suggests Dr. Harlow deliberately delayed treatment that could have saved her life. He received substantial payments from a company linked to Javon afterward. Sarah's composure cracked, tears streaming down her face. "But why? Why would Javon want Sanaa dead?" "That's what I intend to find out." Will refilled her glass. "In the meantime, I thought you should meet your granddaughter. She's extraordinary, Sarah. Despite everything she's endured, she's kind, resilient, and fiercely protective of Corey." "And how is Corey?" "I've seen the news reports about his sudden ability to speak." The neurologists believe the twins share a profound neurological connection. Their separation may have contributed to Corey's verbal ataxia, and their reunion seems to have restored neural pathways that were previously blocked. Sarah wiped her tears with a monogrammed handkerchief. "I said terrible things to you at Sanaa's funeral. Unforgivable things. We were both devastated," Will acknowledged, "and now we know your instincts were partially right. Her death wasn't natural, just not for the reasons you thought." When they returned to the great room, Nevaeh was sitting cross-legged beneath the tree, teaching Corinne the card game again. She looked up as they entered, her expression guarded as she assessed the newcomer. "Nevaeh," Will said gently, "this is your grandmother, Mrs. Bennett. She was your mother's mother." Nevaeh stood smoothing her dress with nervous hands. "Hello, Mrs. Bennett." Sarah Bennett, usually so composed, knelt despite her arthritic knees and opened her arms. "Oh, my darling girl," she whispered. "You look so much like her." Javon Townsend's mountain hideaway blazed against the night sky, orange flames consuming evidence as FBI agents secured the perimeter. Will watched from the safety of an SUV parked on the Forest Service road, his hopes for answers diminishing with each collapsing beam. He must have had a warning system, Agent Torres said, sliding into the passenger seat beside him. The fire started minutes before our team breached the property. We found a body inside, but it'll take dental records to confirm it's Townsend. Convenient, Will remarked bitterly, and any evidence that might explain why he did this to my family. Our techs are working to recover what they can from his computer systems. Some servers were in a fire-resistant room that might yield data. She hesitated. There's something else. We found photographs, hundreds of them, of your children, Corey at school, at doctor's appointments, Neve on the streets, some dating back years. Will felt cold despite the SUV's heater. He was monitoring both of them, even when Nevea was homeless. It appears so. And there were medical files, brain scans, genetic test results, neurological assessments of Corey's condition. He was studying them, Will realized with growing horror. This wasn't just about money or revenge. He was tracking their development as if they were specimens. The implications were too disturbing to fully process. What kind of man orchestrated the separation of infant twins, then methodically documented their divergent development for years? What possible purpose could such cruelty serve? Back at the Johnson penthouse in Boston, Christmas preparations continued despite the shadow of uncertainty. Nevea and Corey, sheltered from the darker aspects of the investigation, counted down the days with increasing excitement. For Nevea, it would be her first real Christmas in years, perhaps ever, given what they now knew about her tumultuous journey through foster care and homelessness. Will had thrown himself into making the holiday magical, partly to distract himself from frustrations with the stalled investigation. Javon Townsend's apparent suicide had left critical questions unanswered, and the charred remains of his compound had yielded few usable clues about his motives. The only new development came from Dr. Denzel's continued research into the twins' remarkable neurological connection. His latest hypothesis centered on the concept of quantum entanglement between identical twins, a controversial theory suggesting that twins separated at birth might maintain a physical connection at the quantum level, affecting each other's development despite geographical distance. It would explain why Corey began speaking the moment he reconnected with Nevea, Dr. Denzel had explained during their last consultation, and why Nevea seemed drawn to him despite having no conscious memory of her brother. Now, as Will supervised Nevea's piano lesson, a new interest she'd developed after discovering Sanaa's baby grand, he contemplated the mysterious bond between his children. Nevea's fingers moved hesitantly over the keys as she practiced Silent Night, her brow furrowed in concentration. "My fingers won't do what my brain wants," she complained. "That's how learning works," Will encouraged her. "You have to train your muscles through repetition." Corey sat nearby, drawing elaborate pictures of what appeared to be a laboratory filled with strange equipment. His artistic abilities had blossomed alongside his verbal skills, revealing a visual intelligence that had been masked by his communication difficulties. Will glanced at Corey's drawing. "What's that, buddy?" "The dream place," Corey answered without looking up. "Where the bad doctor watched us through the glass?" Will froze. "What bad doctor?" The one who hurt Mummy." "Neve," said Corey, aerofactly. Her fingers are still moving across the piano keys. "The one who separated us." Will knelt between them, heart pounding. "How do you know about that?" The twins exchanged a glance. One of those wordless communications that still unnerved Will with their synchronicity. "We dream about it," Corey explained. "The same dream." "It's the cold room with the machines," Nevea continued, "and the doctor with the silver hair who said we were special because our brains are different." Will carefully took the drawing from Corey. The detailed illustration showed a laboratory with medical equipment, observation windows, and 2 infant beds separated by a glass partition. In the corner stood a figure with distinctive silver hair, a perfect depiction of Dr. Harlow based on the hospital ID photo Will had seen during the investigation. "Have you seen pictures of the doctor?" "Oh?" Will asked, struggling to keep his voice steady. "In the news reports or on my desk?" Both children shook their heads. "Is that his name?" Corey asked. "The bad doctor. We just know him from the dream," Neve added. "He's been in our dreams for as long as I can remember." Will felt a chill run through him. How could both children dream of a man they couldn't possibly remember? They had been newborns when Dr. Harlow separated them. That evening, after the twins were asleep, Will called Dr. Anathy and emailed him a scan of Corey's drawing. "This is extraordinary," the neurologist said, after examining the image. "The level of detail suggests this isn't imagination, but actual memory." "That's impossible," Will countered. "They were infants, not ordinary memories." "No, but there's a phenomenon called cellular memory. The theory that memories can be stored within cells throughout the body, not just in the brain. It's controversial, but there are documented cases of organ transplant recipients experiencing memories or preferences from their donors." "And you think my children are experiencing cellular memories of their separation?" "It's one possibility. Another is that they're accessing each other's memories through their quantum connection, creating a more complete picture together than either could access alone." Will rubbed his temples, feeling the beginning of a migraine. "This is beyond science fiction, Doctor. And yet here we are. Your son, diagnosed with permanent verbal iraria, is now speaking fluently. Your daughter, who grew up in completely different circumstances, shares identical mannerisms with her brother, and both are dreaming of events they couldn't possibly remember." Dr. Denzel paused. "There's something else to consider, Will. If Javon Townsend was monitoring their development with such dedication, he must have had a reason," Will finished, the implications dawning on him. "A scientific reason. Precisely. And if he worked with Sanaa, then maybe Sanaa's research holds the key. Sanaa Johnson? His personal laboratory had remained sealed since her death, a time capsule of the brilliant neuroscientist she'd been before motherhood and tragedy intervened. Located in the basement of their Cambridge house, it contained her research materials, notebooks, and the specialized equipment she'd used while pursuing her doctorate in neurogenetics. Will had never been able to bring himself to clear it out, though he'd sold the Cambridge house years ago and moved with Corito the Boston penthouse. Now, as he unlocked the heavy door with Sarah Bennett at his side, he regretted that emotional decision. If Sanaa's research held clues to Javon Townsend's obsession with the twins, those answers had been waiting here all along. "I haven't been down here since before she died," Sarah said softly as they entered the climate-controlled space. Sanaa was so secretive about her work toward the end. Will flipped on the lights, revealing walls of bookshelves, computer workstations, and glass-fronted cabinets filled with scientific equipment. Everything was meticulously organized. Sanaa had been passionate about systems and order. What exactly was she researching? Will asked, realizing how little he knew about his wife's final project. He'd been focused on expanding Johnson Capital during those years, often traveling, while Sanaa divided her time between academia and her partnership with Javon in their neurogenetics startup Neurova. She never discussed specifics, Sarah admitted. She said breakthrough research required absolute confidentiality until publication. She ran a finger along a shelf of leather-bound journals, but these might tell us. For the next 4 hours, they combed through Sanaa's records, laboratory notebooks, computer files, research papers, and correspondence. The picture that emerged was both fascinating and disturbing. Sanaa and Javon had been pursuing research on neurological connections between identical twins, specifically focused on quantum entanglement theory and its potential applications for enhancing human cognition. Their preliminary studies had shown promising results suggesting that identical twins separated in controlled conditions might develop complementary neurological strength, one verbal, one mathematical, one creative, one analytical. They were trying to create specialized brain development, Will murmured, scanning a research proposal. By separating identical twins and exposing them to different environmental stimuli, they theorized they could engineer enhanced cognitive specialization. "But that's horrible," Sarah protested, separating children as experiments. "They weren't planning to use human subjects," Will clarified, turning pages. "This was theoretical research based on animal studies." Sanaa specifically notes the ethical barriers to human application. As they dug deeper, a troubling timeline emerged. 6 months before her pregnancy, Sanaa had documented a serious ethical disagreement with Javon. Her journal entries grew increasingly concerned about the direction of their research, particularly Javon's interest in moving beyond animal studies. He's obsessed with applying our findings to human subjects, she'd written. When I reminded him of the ethical restrictions, he laughed and said, "Ethics are for those who lack vision. I'm considering dissolving our partnership." 2 months later, she'd written, "Discovered financial irregularities in the lab accounts. Javon appears to be funneling research funds into a secondary project he won't discuss." Confronted him today. His explanation was unsatisfactory. "We'll investigate further." And finally, 3 months into her pregnancy, blood test confirms twins. "Haven't told anyone yet, not even Will. I need time to process. Twins run in Will's family, but given my research, I can't help but wonder about the implications. Must meet with Dr. Harlow next week to discuss a high-risk management plan." Will sat back, stunned. She knew she was having twins, but she never told me. "That doesn't sound like Sanaa," Sarah frowned. She would have been ecstatic about twins unless Will's mind raced connecting desperate pieces, unless she was concerned about Javon's reaction. If he knew she was carrying identical twins while they were researching twin neurological development. "You think Javon saw her pregnancy as an opportunity?" Sarah looked horrified that he planned to use his own partner's children as research subjects. It would explain everything: why he arranged for Dr. Harlow to separate the twins at birth, why he had Nevaeh adopted by a family he could monitor, why he tracked their development for years. Will's voice hardened, and why he needed Sanaa out of the way. But how did he know she was having twins, if she hadn't told anyone? Will scanned the journal again. She mentions meeting with Dr. Harlow. If Harlow was already working with Javon, he could have shared her medical information. Sarah's face paled. Dear God, Will, they planned this before the children were even born. A final notebook hidden behind a false panel in Sanaa's desk drawer provided the most damning evidence. In the weeks before her death, Sanaa had documented her suspicions about Javon and Dr. Harlow, including recordings of conversations and financial transactions she'd uncovered. She'd been building a case to expose them, a case she never got to complete. She knew, Will whispered, his throat tight with grief and rage. She was trying to protect our children, and they killed her for it. As they prepared to leave with Sanaa's journals and hard drives, Will's phone rang, Malia number flashing on the screen. Will. Her voice was tight with panic. Someone tried to break into the penthouse. Security stopped them, but Will, it was a team of men with tranquilizer guns and medical transport equipment. They were coming for the twins. The sunset painted the windows of the Johnson family's new home in golden hues as Nevaeh practiced her piano scales. 1 year had passed since the night of the attempted kidnapping. A year of healing, justice, and rebuilding. The beachfront property in San Diego, with its state-of-the-art security system and proximity to the country's leading pediatric neurological research center, had become their sanctuary. Will watched his daughter from the doorway, marveling at her progress. At 8 years old, Nevaeh had blossomed into a confident, articulate child, whose street-smart instincts had gradually softened into wisdom beyond her years. Her nightmares had subsided, replaced by dreams she eagerly shared at breakfast. Ordinary childhood dreams of flying and adventure, by memories of separation and loss. She's getting quite good, Malia observed, joining Will in the doorway. His sister had relocated with them, unwilling to be separated from the children she'd grown to love as her own. Sanaa would be proud, Will agreed, of both of them. Across the room, Corey sat surrounded by complex Lego structures, his fingers moving with precise coordination that had been unimaginable in the silent, frustrated child of a year ago. The twins still shared their mysterious connection, often communicating without words and instinctively sensing each other's emotions, but they had also developed distinct personalities and interests. Nevaeh drawn to music and languages, Corito architecture and science. The FBI investigation had culminated 6 months earlier with the arrest of the surviving conspirators. Dr. Harlow, it turned out, had not died in the car accident reported years ago, but had been living under an assumed identity while continuing his work with Javon Townsend. Both men had been part of a rogue research group called Gemini Cognition, dedicated to exploring the neurological potential of separated identical twins. The attempted kidnapping had been their desperate final effort to reclaim the subjects they considered their most promising. Instead, it had led to their capture and the discovery of a hidden research facility where 6 other sets of separated twins had been monitored. All children who, like Nevaeh and Corey, had been stolen at birth and placed in controlled environments. Sanaa's research journals had provided the crucial evidence needed to dismantle the organization and reunite the other twin pairs. Her meticulous documentation preserved in that sealed laboratory had ultimately protected not only her own children, but others victimized by the same scheme. "Dad, come look," Cora called from the patio doors. "There's dolphins." Will joined his son at the glass doors overlooking the Pacific. Sure enough, a pod of dolphins parked through the waves, their sleek bodies catching the last light of day. "Can we go down to the beach?" Corey asked, his eyes bright with excitement. The dolphins were a good omen. They'd appeared on the day the family had moved into this house, and the twins had decided they were a sign of Sanaa's approval. "Let me get Nevaeh," Will said. But she was already beside them, drawn by her twins' excitement. As they walked along the shore, the twins ran ahead, their laughter carrying on the salt breeze. Will thought of how far they'd come from that cold November night when a starving child had approached him outside with an impossible claim. Sarah Bennett joined him, her arthritis improving in the California climate. "Sanaa is watching," she said simply, following his gaze to the children. "I feel her here." "So do I," Will admitted. "Sometimes I catch myself looking for her in their expressions, their gestures. They both have her curiosity, her determination. And your stubbornness," Sarah added with a small smile. Their relationship had warmed considerably as they united in their commitment to the twins' well-being. The children had run to the water's edge, pointing excitedly as the dolphins leapt closer to shore, almost as if performing for their audience. Will watched Nevaeh whisper something to Corey, who nodded in solemn agreement. When they returned, their faces were alight with purpose. "Daddy," Nevaeh said, taking his hand. "Foster, I have decided what we want to do when we grow up. Both of you," Will asked, amused by their certainty. "We're going to be doctors," Corey declared. "But not the bad kind. The kind that helps kids like us," Nevaeh clarified. "Kids with special brains." Will felt his throat tighten with emotion. From tragedy had come purpose. Sanaa would have called it the ultimate transformation of pain into healing. Later that night, as Will tucked the twins into their respective beds, adjacent rooms connected by a door they insisted remain open, Nevaeh asked the question she posed each night. "Tell us about Mummy." It had become their bedtime ritual, a story about Sanaa, a memory that kept her present in their lives. Tonight, Will told them about her first scientific breakthrough, how she danced around their tiny apartment when her research was published. She believed that understanding the brain was the key to understanding humanity, Will concluded, and she believed that knowledge should be used for healing, never for harm. "Like our foundation," Corey murmured sleepily, referring to the Sanaa Johnson Foundation, established to support ethical neuroscience research and twin studies. "Exactly like that," Will agreed. "Your mother's work continues through you both." After the children had fallen asleep, Will sat on the patio overlooking the moonlit ocean. The year had brought justice, but also revelation. The twins' extraordinary bond had been extensively studied by ethical researchers who confirmed what Sanaa had theorized. Identical twins shared neurological connections that transcended conventional understanding. Rather than exploiting this discovery, as Javon had planned, the Johnson Foundation now supported research into how these connections might help children with communication disorders, using Corey's remarkable recovery as a case study in the healing power of twin reunification. Will thought of the homeless child who had appeared out of nowhere, guided by an inexplicable certainty that had led her to her twin. "If I make your son talk, can I have your leftover food?" she'd asked, hungry and desperate, yet somehow knowing she possessed something miraculous to offer. In the end, she'd given Will far more than his son's voice. She'd restored his family, uncovered the truth about Sanaa's death, and brought purpose back to his life. The miracle child from the streets had turned out to be exactly what she'd claimed, a twin separated at birth, carrying half of a connection so powerful it had survived 5 years of deliberate separation. As the waves crashed against the shore below, Will made the same promise he renewed each night. Sanaa's legacy would live on through their children, and the twins, who had found each other against impossible odds, would never be separated.